Evening. Welcome to the regular meeting of the Board of Trustees, September 27th, 2022 at 6 p.m. Mr. Baker?
Ms. Ulrich?
Here.
Mr. Unger?
Here.
Mr. Waller?
Here. So we are here 3-0. Is there a need for executive session, and if so, under what Ohio Revised Codes, please?
Yes, I would recommend that the board adopt a motion to go into executive session pursuant to Ohio Revised Code, Section 121G1, to consider the appointment, employment, dismissal, discipline, promotion, demotion, or compensation of public employee or officials in accordance with G3 for conferences with the attorney concerning pending or imminent litigation, with G4 for preparing, conducting, or reviewing negotiations for collective bargaining sessions with public employees, and with G8 to consider confidential information related to marketing plans, specific business strategy, production techniques, trade secrets, or personal financial statements of an applicant for economic development assistance.
All right. Is there a motion of that sort?
I motion we go into executive session for the reasons detailed by Administrator Weckbach.
I'll second.
All right. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
None.
Mr. Baker for the vote, please.
Ms. Ulrich?
Yes.
Mr. Unger?
Yes.
Mr. Waller?
Yes. So we will go into executive session at 6:01 p.m. Thank you. We'll be back. All right. Calling back to order from executive session at the exact time 7:01 p.m. on September 27th, 2022. The attendance, please.
Ms. Ulrich?
Here.
Mr. Unger?
Here.
Mr. Waller?
Here, Mr. Weckbach, is there anything to report from executive session?
Nothing to report.
All right, we're going to go on then and do the pledge in meditation moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We just take a minute to bring to heart those items that we need help with, to learn how to cope with challenges in our lives and do the right thing for Colerain this evening and all the time. All right. We've been provided in the board packet with meeting minutes. Are there any motions with regard to minutes?
I motion that we would approve the minutes of the September 13th meeting.
I'll second.
Any discussion?
I sent you one spelling typo. I think you got it, Jeff.
We'll go ahead and call the vote then on the minutes.
Yeah, I did. Yes. Ms. Ulrich?
Yes.
Mr. Unger?
Yes.
Mr. Waller?
Yes, that passes 3-0. We have, Mr. Weckbach, we have in front of us a number of presentations for this evening. Perhaps you can take us through the agenda.
Yes, the first presentation tonight will be presented by Chief Cordy, swearing in newly hired police officer Adam McKay.
Chief?
Evening, everybody. Adam, you want to stand up here with me, bud? We're going to get through this fairly quickly for his sake and for the sake that he is in training. And from my understanding is they might have an OVI waiting for him to go process and learn about here very quickly. So
Okay.
always training, right, bud? All right, so Adam McKay. Adam attended Western Hills High School and Pendleton County High School. At a young age, he had interest in law enforcement due to his finding out his grandfather and great uncle were both City of Cincinnati police officers. Prior to working with our department, Adam worked for almost 2 years at Warren County Sheriff's Office. And would you like to introduce your family that you brought tonight?
Yeah, I've got my mom here, got my dad, got my cousin and her husband, got my Uncle Al, Ded's daughter, and then I have Amber, my daughter Meredith, and my Aunt Lori over here.
All right, great, thank you. All right, buddy, let's step right over here. Let me turn on these microphones real quick. They're right there. I have to make sure I get these cameras going, or these microphones on. All right, you ready? Raise your right hand. I, Adam McKay.
I, Adam McKay.
Do solemnly swear.
Do solemnly swear
That I will uphold
that I will uphold
the Constitution of the United States of America
the Constitution of the United States of America
and the Constitution of the State of Ohio
and the Constitution of the State of Ohio
and its bylaws.
and its bylaws.
I will abide by
I will
mission and value statement, code of ethics, rules and regulations, and police department, policy and procedure, and I will faithfully discharge the duties of police officer in and for Colerain Township, Hamilton County, State of Ohio, to the best of my ability, so help me God. Congratulations.
Congratulations, welcome aboard. All right, next item.
And while they vacate the room, I will ask Chief Alan Walls to come up for an exciting presentation, retirement proclamation for one of our longtime firefighters, Paul Riedel. Or Riedel. I always say it wrong and I can never get it right. So,
Good evening to the board,
Good evening, Chief.
all of you in attendance. As the administrator said, we're here to recognize Paul Riedel tonight for his years of service and retirement. Paul had over 33 years of service to the township, both part-time, full-time. In addition, he was an acting company officer, a cancer survivor, and I think most notably, one of 4 individuals from the Colerain Fire Department who have been inducted into the Ohio Fire Service Hall of Fame. And I think it's most important then to recognize him then with what's stated with his induction. In April of 2008, 2 of Colerain's own were lost in a line of duty death. The department and the community were shaken to their core. With assistance from the National Fallen Firefighter Survivors Program, the families and friends of those 2 heroes were able to begin the healing process. Determined to bring hope out of tragedy, Paul dedicated himself to provide help and support to survivor families. Seeing firsthand the effect of these programs and understanding the impact on the healing process, Paul sought to raise funds for the National Fallen Firefighters Association so that others might find solace in their darkest hours. Paul became the organizer and leadership force with the Greater Cincinnati Regional Fallen Firefighters Foundation golf outing. He has interacted with fire departments in Ohio, Kentucky, and Indiana. Through his actions, he's brought great attention to the fire service, safety initiatives, and the potential effects of a line of duty death on area communities. Fellow firefighters and survivor family members describe him as skilled, professional, committed, and compassionate, and I think we can all concur with that. As a cancer survivor, he understands the importance of giving of oneself and the service to others. His commitment and dedication to Ohio's fire service, his community, and the families and loved ones of lost brothers and sisters is to be commended. Firefighter paramedic Paul Riedel is a great credit to himself, the Colerain Township Department of Fire and EMS, and the state of Ohio.
Wow.
I think those words in and of itself describe the man here beside me, Paul Riedel, and the things that he's accomplished. And if he would like to, perhaps he can quantify the dollars that have been raised and give credit to anyone else that he would like to, and then we'll do the proclamation.
I would think after this year, we've probably raised approximately right around $300,000 for the National Fallen Firefighters Foundation.
Oh, fantastic.
I couldn't do this without the support of the entire Colerain family, Chief Walls, Chief Cook before him, everybody going way back the last 12 years. It would not have been possible to do that without their support. They let us do our charity work when we have the spare time, and it obviously reflects directly on the department, and this is a Colerain thing. It's what we're known for nationally, that we do this for the National Fallen Firefighters Foundation. So, and my thanks to Chief Walls and everybody else who's ever been involved. Steve Kahn and his wife, my wife, we put them through hell the first couple of years with that whole program. Doug Eikens is on our staff still, and I just want to thank all of them for all the help and support they've given us. So I couldn't do it without them.
Thank you, Paul. At this time, we'll have Trustee Waller with the proclamation.
All right, we have a proclamation I'll read, and then we will have a vote to accept. A proclamation for firefighter paramedic Paul F. Riedel for his years of dedicated service to Colerain Township, Ohio. Firefighter paramedic Paul F. Riedel, I've gotten it right? All right. Was hired on July 11th of 1989 as an employee of the Colerain Township Department of Fire and Emergency Medical Services. And whereas firefighter paramedic Paul F. Riedel has demonstrated professionalism, allegiance, service, commitment, and excellence through his contributions as a firefighter, emergency medical technician, paramedic, leader, program manager, employee, colleague, and friend during his tenure with the department. And whereas firefighter paramedic Paul F. Riedel retired on August 20th of 2022 after 33 years of commendable dedication to providing fire protection, emergency medical, and community risk reduction services to the Colerain Township community. Therefore, be it resolved that the Colerain Township Board of Trustees recognizes firefighter paramedic Paul F. Riedel as an outstanding employee and that he contributed greatly to our community during his long tenure of public service. Be it further resolved that in recognition of all that firefighter paramedic Paul F. Riedel has done for Colerain Township, the Colerain Township Board of Trustees hereby proclaim Tuesday, September 27th, 2022 as a special day of recognition for Paul Riedel to acknowledge his contributions to our community and wish him continued success in retirement. Thank you so much for your service.
Thank you very much.
I will go ahead and motion that we would approve the proclamation.
And I will second, gladly.
Is there any discussion?
Sure. Congratulations, Paul. You mentioned in the, it's mentioned here 1989. I'm probably counting 17 trustees that you've survived, but it took the three of us to get you to quit. So congratulations. I always thought anybody that works for an elected board that can change every 2 years, and that you've been through a couple fire chiefs and several administrators, and it sounds to me like you just stuck through the process and kept working and kept looking straight ahead and did a great job for the township. So congratulations.
Thank you very much. All I can say is that it's been an honor and a privilege to serve the citizens of Colerain Township, and you guys are working in the best job in the world.
Oh,
Enjoy it. It goes pretty quick, and go home safe every day. Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you. What else I could say is just thank you so much for your service and all you've done for the township.
And I'm sure there's a lot that hope to follow in your footsteps of all your great, wonderful attributes, and I hope they do. Thank you for all your work. Thank you.
All right, we'll go ahead and have a vote then.
Ms. Orich?
Yes.
Mr. Unger?
Yes.
Mr. Waller?
Yes, surprise, that passes 3-0.
Thank you to the board.
Thank you.
Congratulations again, Paul.
Great. Enjoy retirement.
All right, board, and the last item we have is just an additional proclamation. This is a proclamation recognizing Childhood Cancer Awareness Week, which is from October 9th to October 15th this year. So the National Childhood Cancer Awareness Week comes on those dates, and we had a group reach out to us asking if we would recognize those dates as well to try to raise awareness of all the kids that are suffering and that have passed away from these horrible diseases. And so there's a proclamation in your packet if one of you all would like to read that into the record.
Matt's got it.
All right. Proclamation recognizing Childhood Cancer Awareness Week, October 9th through October 15th, 2022, Hamilton County, Ohio. Be it proclaimed by the Township Trustees of Colerain Township that whereas the American Cancer Fund for Children and Kids Cancer Connection report cancer is the leading cause of death by disease among U.S. children between infancy and the age 15. This tragic disease is detected in nearly 16,000 of our country's young people each and every year. And whereas 1 in 5 of our nation's children loses his or her battle with cancer, many infants, children, and teens will suffer from long-term effects of comprehensive treatment, including secondary cancers. An estimated 400,000 children and adolescents are diagnosed with cancer globally each year. And whereas founded nearly 30 years ago by Stephen Firestein, a member of the philanthropic Max Factor Cosmetics family, the American Cancer Fund for Children, Inc., and Kids Cancer Connection, Inc., along with the Lions Club International, are dedicated to helping these children and their families. And whereas the American Cancer Fund for Children and Kids Cancer Connection provide a variety of vital patient psychosocial services to children undergoing cancer treatment at Nationwide Children's Hospital in Columbus, Cincinnati Children's Hospital Medical Center, Dayton Children's Hospital, Shriners Children's Ohio in Dayton, as well as participating hospitals throughout the country, thereby enhancing the quality of life for these children and their families. And whereas the American Cancer Fund for Children and Kids Cancer Connection also sponsored toy distributions, family sailing experiences, pet-assisted therapy, Laughternoon, Laughter is Healing, KCC Super Experience, positive appearance programs, and hospital celebrations in honor of a child's determination and bravery to fight the battle against childhood cancer, be it proclaimed that the Colerain Township Board of Trustees does hereby recognize October 9th to October 15th, 2022 as Childhood Cancer Awareness Week.
A motion that we approve the proclamation.
I will second.
Okay, discussion?
It sounds like there's a lot of people doing a lot of good things for the cause.
Thanks to all those organizations and what they did. Mr. Baker?
Ms. Orich?
Yes.
Mr. Unger?
Yes.
Mr. Waller?
Yes, that passes 3-0.
Is there any representative here?
There is not. We'll coordinate getting that to them.
All right, I picked up citizen comment, citizen address. I don't know if there's more out there. But I picked up a sizable stack a couple minutes ago.
Thank you all for coming.
Thank you. Thank you for all you do.
I love the support of each other. I just think that's awesome.
Good luck, Paul. Thank you. Come back and see us sometime. Don't be somebody just disappears.
Thank you. All right. So as Mr. Weckbeck puts the time clock up, we will take these just in the order that they received. So the order I received them, as they were stacked in the basket. So first, we ask that you stay within the 5-minute limit to enable as many people to speak as possible. First, we have Thomas P. Bryant. Good evening, sir.
Good evening. I first want to thank you for the work that you've been doing on the address of 2412 Lynn Fork. I've noticed that a lot of the company trucks and trailers are not parking in the yard and have kind of left the area. So I appreciate that, the efforts that the zoning department and the police department have done and the steps that they can take. But it's one thing, it's just like when you buy a car and think, boy, this car is neat. You drive around and you don't realize how many of those cars, just like the one you bought, you see. Well, this house that we were talking about, you go right around the corner and there's another company that parks dual axle trailers and their company truck, vans and stuff all over the street in the driveway and stuff. Now, there's just 6, 7 houses around the corner of the house that we were talking about. And the zoning department knows of this house. And then there's a house on Miles going around the corner the other way that's got refrigerators and all kinds of stoves and collecting scrap metal. And the zoning department knows about them. Well, I've been told by some of the people that when he gets these, he can't junk them unless he gets rid of the Freon. Well, I'm told that he's releasing the Freon in the air. He doesn't have a recovery license to recover the Freon and to dispose of it properly. So there's an environmental problem I see there. Plus, with all the refrigerators and stuff, I got pictures I just took on my way over here to the meeting of how he's got them all piled up from the front of his house in his driveway to the street. And it's an eyesore, just like the other house was that you all have been working on solving that problem. But it seems like you find one, you go around the corner and you find a bunch of others. And I know they're right on the border of your Colerain. And so all the work that I heard from the last meeting that they're doing on beautifying Colerain, that I wish they could get to the outskirts and take care of the eyesores that I have to look at every day of seeing all this. So once again, I do appreciate the work you've done on this one, and I hope that the zoning department, the police, and you guys can take care of these other two places that I see. So I want to thank you again, and that's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Coming out.
Mr. Weckbach, do you have the information here on these two, or?
I believe I've got your contact information, so I can follow up with you to figure out.
I text Jordan. He asked me to text him all the pictures, and I text him the address, the picture of the house with the address, and the violations that I see. And so he's been looking at that, and I know he's been getting in touch with Vinebrook, is the company that's bought a lot of property in Colerain Township, but they're not a resident of the state. And he said that they're trying to get a hold of the property manager that they have hired here to take care of these properties to see what they can do. But the owner of Vinebrook, from his understanding, doesn't reside in Ohio. So, but I do, if you want to see those after the meeting, I can show you the pictures and the addresses. But I do send them to him. Okay? Thank you.
And thank you. And for just a point of record, then Mr. Weckbach sends us typically on Fridays a list of
Different activities.
the activities he's done. So so we get a follow-up on a weekly basis on that. Thank you. Mr. John Hendry. Thank you, sir.
Just have some concerns about what's going on with the budget. First off, just wanted to make everybody aware that people in Colerain Township are going to be subject to potentially $242 million worth of debt service. And we're talking about an additional $12 million is what I saw proposed for the fire departments and stuff. I'd like to say that, you know, all of us are stuck with increased water and sewer rates. We've got increased expenses for food, fuels, you know, and things. And eventually, I think we're taxed. We're already got issue 7 tax burden that we're paying in Hamilton County. And the wagon's pretty well loaded right now. And adding another debt, and when I look at the debt service and I look at the budget, I don't even see the spread there. I only see a $700,000 difference between the revenue and expense in the 2022 budget, and the debt service for this would be about $760,000. So I don't know how we're going to cover that. I'd like to recommend that we try to pay for most of this out of current funds. And, you know, one of the things that I've become aware of is that we have an issue with police officers leaving over the last 2 years. I do have some questions. What was the turnover rate prior to 2020? All right, and why are they leaving? In the exit interviews, why are they saying they're leaving? Is it just for money? Okay. And then if we're going to open up negotiations with the police union, which we just recently concluded, what about the other bargaining units, and how is that going to affect what the budget is? And, you know, we're taking money that we found in the sock drawer to pay current expenses. What's going to make those expenses up in future years? So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Sorry, I'm making my last note here. So typically what we do then, we'll answer these all at once. A lot of times there'll be some duplication. George Bruneman. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you. I just wanted to address the motions on tonight's agenda regarding the construction financing for the fire stations. My wife and I recently moved from Green Township to Colerain Township, and I have to say we're extremely concerned about the increase that meant in property taxes. So the house I had in Green Township was about twice the size of my current house, twice the valuation, but yet the taxes for the township are almost identical. So I went to the auditor's website, looked it up, and sure enough, the taxes in Colerain Township are $525 per 100K compared to $328 in Green Township. That's like a 60% increase over what we were paying in our previous place. And any decision we make tonight about future levies or future loans, I think we need to be very concerned about how that will impact future tax levies, because what we're doing right now is unacceptable. On the November ballot, we already have another Northwest School levy. Their bloodlust for additional funding is just incredible. They're 40% higher than Oak Hills for a 2-star rating versus a 4-star rating at Oak Hills. So I understand the confounding issue for financing the construction of the firehouses seems to be what to do with the $7 million plus we got in COVID relief funds from the government. First and foremost, a one-time windfall must not be used for new spending or for ongoing expenses. It just doesn't make any sense. Second, the first rule of fiscal management is not to use one-time funds as a kickstart for some new spending. It seems obvious to me and to others that a one-time expense of new fire stations is a perfect match to one-time income that's going to be going away. We're not going to get more COVID money. Cross my fingers. Yeah, the push to pay for these fire stations with a bond when a direct funding source is available for the majority of the costs, and I understand it doesn't cover it all, but the debt interest and the bond management overhead of audits and managing the funds is going to easily double, if not triple, the cost of that construction, which is just insane. I understand that the budgeting process is revealing other township expenses, like the aforementioned police budget, but those need to be done within the normal budgeting process, and you should not use a short-term funding source as some sort of slush fund to try and hide that expense for just a short term. Ongoing critical service expenses must be managed within the current budget. The time for frills and nice-to-haves is long gone. The inflation we are currently experiencing is at record levels. It is not coming down anytime soon. And to be discussing additional spendings or additional debt for a township that is already spending more than its neighbors seems to be fiscally irresponsible. I urge you, the trustees, as your fiduciary duty, to figure out how to meet the township obligations without further penalizing the taxpayers of Colerain Township. You must scope the spending to the funds available. If this means limiting the construction or tabling the idea altogether, then so be it. Thank you for your time and attention. If you have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer or meet with you afterwards.
Okay. And again, so we'll go through the master list here at the end. I am going to probably get this name wrong. Is it Bob Richmond and Nick Van Zyl? Van Zyl, yeah. Okay. All right.
Appreciate everybody's time tonight. I'm not going to sound as smart as the last guy up here, but more of a local concern. So we just moved into 7020 Weiss Road from 6901 Weiss Road, and there's a property at 4811 Hanley Road. The property backs up into our property, and from my understanding, there's a man-made pond back there. With no fencing. Myself, we have a 8, 6, and 2-year-old that like to go wandering. I know 6901 just had occupancy of 4 children who come play with my children, and there's 3 other children on the street that come back and play with my children as well. We've told them to stay away from that property, but as you know, the more you tell a kid, they're going to do it. Yeah, they're going to do it anyway. So I know there's other violations on that property. not too concerned about the others. Just, I think if somebody was to put in a pool, they would have to put up a fence, from my understanding. So I think recommendation of putting a fence up to protect, children from wandering and potentially fatal incident is our recommendation at 4811 Hanley Road.
All right, now, do you have you shared your contact information with Mr. Wackback?
I don't know that I have your contact information, but I think I can get it, so.
Yeah, we'll get it.
Okay, and again, one of the things that Mr. Weckback has added that's been tremendous from my point of view is at the end of each week, we get it's probably 15, 18 pages long, but it's a whole list of where these things are so that they don't get lost in a wash somewhere. So you guys will.
Yeah, we'll connect.
Thank you so much. And thank you for coming here and letting us know. I know that 8, 6, and 2-year-olds, it's scary.
Yeah,
I get it.
Appreciate your time and your service.
Thank you.
Add something, please?
Sure.
Your zoning administrator, Jared Ollie.
Yes.
He came out to the property and did take pictures.
Right.
He did inform us that there is a court hearing coming up on October 4th.
Right.
So apparently this resident has had other issues. So this is just adding to the, I guess, the fire, so to speak, that we really want you to take a real good look at this on the safety of my grandchildren and the other neighbors.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Please make sure that Jeff gets your call number. Okay, thank you.
All right. Lori McMullen. Good evening.
Hey, everyone. So first, just want to give my congratulations to firefighter, paramedic Paul Riedel for his service. That's amazing. Also, on the topic of childhood cancer, can you believe it's been 4 years ago this fall that we hosted the superhero Christmas parade in honor of Bertie Allen? So just want to keep his memory out there as well. I'm sure you know I'm going to touch on traffic calming. It's on your agenda tonight. I respectfully ask you to remove from your policy that traffic calming is not permitted. There's some pretty strong language in that policy that I think we need to look at before we finalize what we're going to do in the budget as well. And I work in the medical field. I'm not an accountant, but I'm not sure if I'm reading this right or not, and I hope you guys explain it during your discussion. But are we turning 9.6 million into 22.7 million? Is that what it's saying on here? So I hope you guys can explain it to me, because it doesn't make sense. And so if we have the money, we should probably just spend what we have. The nuisance. I only have one question about that, if you don't mind. On page 73 of the packet, section B, it mentions the 3 or more nuisance activities declared in a 12-month period. If that nuisance maintains the same owner or the same tenant, when that 12-month period is over, is that clock going to restart and now they have, say, 2023, they get their next 4? Or can that be rolled over and keep track of how many nuisances they have? And then last but not least for me, because you know it's near and dear to my heart, I've spoken about it for quite a while, is the rental registration. So overall, I think it's great. The only thing that I really disagree with is how little we are charging. It's not, if our goal is to get people registered and not make money off of it to cover our costs, then I think this is the perfect policy for that. But if we're trying to slow these predatory landlords like Vinebrook down, it's not going to cover that. So just some fun math real quick. I know Vinebrook has over 300 houses, and if we charge them $150 per year, that's around $15,000. So it sounds like a lot of money. But, and to be fair and clear, this is not just Colerain, this is all of Hamilton County. I printed it this afternoon from the auditor's website. 21 pages, 50 houses apiece. Right now in just Hamilton County, Vinebrook, under their many, many names, you know, they hide themselves well. In Hamilton County, they own 1,067 houses currently. Total sales, $342 million. So $15,000 is not going to persuade a company like Vinebrook to keep coming in and buying up all of our houses. So let's try to use this as a way to at least slow them down, because I know I've joked about it before that I live in Vinebrook, which is really Northbrook, but it's happening, guys. My neighborhood is disappearing. So if you don't mind, I'll leave this with you guys so you can feel the weight and the burden that Vinebrook's putting on us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lori.
Laura Dakin. Good evening.
I don't often come up and address situations from the agenda. I usually go directly to the sources. But tonight I thought it was important because we have had a lot of items that we've had on our to-do list for quite some time that are on here. And I just want to make sure that you all understand the importance of them to our community. And traffic calming is the first one. This is something we've addressed for years now. We know that the cut-throughs in the neighborhoods are treacherous with speed. And the biggest thing that I want to say about traffic calming is that we need it to be added to the 2023 road plan. It has to, we have to find a way to make the cars slow down, especially, like I said, starting out with the cut-throughs. We have in there that we need to have feasibility studies done. We know which streets it is. I just feel like we just keep deterring from the problem with time, and we need to address the problem. So traffic calming, I strongly request that we move forward with whatever we can do to slow the traffic. Then we had an address listed on the agenda for a demo. I realize that's a new one. I just wanted to personally thank David Miller, who's been having conversation with me on the capstan demo and where we were with that. I know that one's not on the agenda tonight, but he has provided me very quickly information regarding that demo and where we stand and how that's going to be coming down. So I appreciate that, Mr. Miller. Then I too want to address the fire station, how to pay for the 2 new fire stations. I know we need them too, I agree. And the biggest thing with that is, like Lori mentioned, the $10 million additional dollars that's going to cost if we use bonds. It seems to me that those funds, paying those bonds back, could be used to pay for more street repair and pay for more police, because we need them, to give firefighters more money on the hour so that they'll stay, both the police and the fire. we have to, but to go into debt just makes no sense to me. I've been a single mother most of my children's lives. I could not go into debt and pay those extra funds. If I didn't have it, I couldn't get it. And to me, we need to make that decision. If we don't have the funds, then maybe we don't need 2 firehouses. Maybe we start with 1, whatever it takes. But like I said, I do know that we need to get at least the one down on Galbraith replaced as soon as possible to have better conditions for our personnel who take care of us every day. And then the rental registration. Staffing is my question about that. How are we going to staff to administer this? Have we thought about that? So just in the discussion, I would like to know if, there's a lot to track, both on the rental and the nuisance regulation policy. How are we going to manage that? That's got to be quite costly. I know it needs to be done, and I'm for both of them, but we've asked for both of them for quite some time. I agree with Lori on the Vinebrook situation, 100%. As you all know, Vinebrook is not one of my favorite topics, although I do try to build relationships with them just so that we can hopefully improve our neighborhood that, like Lori said, is being taken over by Vinebrook. And that's the east side. That's just not Northbrook. You're going all the way down to Kemper and all the way down. Oh, 5 minutes. See how fast that went? Okay, I think that was it, though. Anyway, I believe. And I just wanted to share my thoughts on it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I don't think there are any more out there. I'm on my last one now, so if you haven't spoken and you're Carl Hertenstein, you can come up. If you're not Carl and you haven't spoken, you've signed up. Well, I don't have your sheet, so is Carl here? All right. I guess not.
I don't know, Carl.
No, I don't either. Okay. All right. Let's delve our way through this, Mr. Wetback, and talk about these questions. I've got a mess up here. I think, Mr. Bryant, we have taken care of. Is that right?
Yes.
All right. And especially the environmental stuff. We have an environmental officer that can investigate that. Mr. Hendry talked about the turnover prior to 2020. I have those numbers somewhere in this. Most of the turnover has been 2020 after. Make expenses up in future years. He made the point. They made a point about the 2022 budget in 2022. I don't know if he was talking about 23, but we're working on 23 now. Mr. Bruman talked about the same thing: construction, the fire stations, the 7.2 million, the one time. I'm looking for questions. I don't see a question. Those are, I think, basically statements. Mr. Richmond and Mr. Van Zyl, you have taken care of, I think. Mrs. McMullen, traffic calming, we're going to discuss today. I think she was holding and referring to the bond repayment schedule. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. And the nuisance on Section B, after the 12-month period, I think that starts over. That's my impression. Is that the case?
I think it's within a 12-month period.
Right. So you get.
So it doesn't have to be 1-1 to 1-1, but it could be 4-1 to 4-1 or what have you. 12 months, I get three nuisance, and then I'm good for 6 years, and the next year I get 3 more. That kind of starts over, is I think the point, right? And I want to triple check the language while we're kind of talking through it.
In our rules, or is that encoded in our rules, or could we change that to 4 or 5? Or, some more number of incidents besides 3?
That's encoded in the.
It's in the resolution as drafted.
Stuff. So that can be you're exactly right. That can be an open discussion on
So
that.
the way that the Section B notices and orders reads is within any 12 consecutive month period. So let's say you have a nuisance violation 1/1, 4/1, 6/1, and then another one in 3 of the following year. That would still be within the 12 months, even though it's, that'd be a 4/1 to 3/31 12-month window, and then that could move to then being a 6/1 to 5/31 window. So I think it's a rolling window.
Okay. In the rental registration with how little we charge, I think that from our discussions, the goal of what these rental registrations are matters, in that technically, in an open capitalist society, we can't stop people from buying homes.
And legally, the goal cannot be to prevent a corporation from owning property. That's when the resolution goes subject to question, and if it were to be challenged and we weren't able to justify how we came to that fee level, we may potentially lose a lawsuit, and then the entire program is null and void.
So then, when we've talked about this in the past, we've talked about it in terms of having a contact person locally that we can contact if there's issues with the home. As far as we don't want them here, that's not anything that we can legally do. The mistaken talked about the traffic calming, the feasibility studies, and we have that data from the streets that we've targeted, right?
Not on the streets that are part of next year's road plan. And so when we get to that item, I think we can discuss about that.
All right, and the staffing of the rental registration and the, we've talked a little bit about that, and I think we talked about pro champs is that where we're headed on that?
Yes, and you'd probably need one staff person to be the boots on the ground here.
And that would be a staff person that could conceivably work with the vacant and the,
They could likely do both, and the $50 fee is sized in a way that should cover their expenses.
and I think that's maybe all I have right here. Is that right? I think I got everybody's question. The statements are statements, and we will probably respond to that individually as trustees. I don't want to make, but the ones that are fact-based questions, I wanted to get out there. Administrative reports.
Yes, I believe we just have one report tonight, and that's from me. Exciting project that's in the works, and we've actually got a representative here today from the Groesbeck Public Library. They are going to be working with side-by-side ministries to remove some of the fencing and shrubbery that currently is a barrier between access between our library property and Groesbeck Park. So we're really excited about that opportunity and all the volunteer work that's going to go into that. It's going to create a really nice connection for folks that are patrons at the library and want to pop on out and use the playground and all kinds of great things. So this was just an idea that different individuals had, and wanted to share that with the board so that they were aware, and to see if you all had any questions on that proposal.
Any questions, comments?
Not at this time.
All right, we will move on to, were we going to do something about fire, or is that
For the
administrative reports?
conversation around the stations?
Yeah, or are we going to do that
We can
during
do that during the item.
Did Alan or Ed not have a report?
I do not believe we had a report from fire, police, or development tonight.
All right, trustees reports.
You can go first, Dan.
Okay. Capstan, that's been a problem for a long time. Where are we at with that being on the agenda?
Yep, so we're in the process of drafting the actual RFP document that will be going out. We have to get approval from the Port Authority before we do that, so that we are complying with all their rules that are associated with the federal dollars that are being used to do the demolitions. And once we can get all parties to sign off, we'll have that RFP before you all, so then we can put it out to the street.
And not to put you on the spot, but when do you anticipate that we would send that out to?
I'm not sure. I can ask
Okay,
Mr.
that's
Moore.
fine.
Yep.
And then there was 3 or 4 other ones
Yes.
that are going to go out.
Yep.
Are they held up in the same way, or?
Yeah, so it's all going to be one, the way we envision it is one RFP to address all the properties at one time. We hope to get economies of scale that way and save a little bit of dollars.
Okay. As far as corporations taking over neighborhoods, I was up at Home Depot last week, and I ran into a longtime friend who lives on Ben Hill, which is over off Cheviot Road, And he mentioned after 41 years, he was selling his house and moving, and he's in a small house. He's not so much downsizing, but he had mentioned that a lot of the houses in that nice neighborhood, and it's still a nice neighborhood, but are now controlled by out-of-state owners, and he's starting to see that with the reduction in maintenance of the yards and the bushes, and, you know, when sometimes an owner-occupied house has a different level of maintenance than a non-owner-occupied house. The work over on Lynn Fork, yes, I'm aware there's another property over there that may be an issue. And then the last thing is, apparently we're gonna have a good discussion, hopefully, coming up under the fire bond things that we're talking about. And one thing I've heard with a couple of the comments is the amount, and and hopefully I'll be able to, we can get a second on these so we can have a discussion and get this ironed out once and for all. But in case we don't, I did want to mention that on August 9th, we put out a request for qualifications for the firehouse, and I hear 12 million. Well, that was what it was in April. Then we had a professional company called Immersion Design come in and look at this, and they put out a request for qualifications that clearly points out that the total maximum budget is $9,600,000, and that includes both facilities, design services, construction, and additional township soft cost. This went out, we approved it on a 3-0 vote on August 9th, and it went out the next day. And in fact, it's got a schedule, and according to the schedule, we should be release of RFP to the 3 finalists on September 27th, which is the 7th item on the schedule. So when this conversation comes up, and I'm hopeful I'll get a second on it so we can discuss it, but this is where I'm getting $9.5 million from, or 9.6 million. That is something the 3 of us approved 6 weeks ago, so.
And if I can clarify, there was an addendum that was issued related to that specified the 9.6 is just for construction. The soft cost and design fees are part of the 12 million total cost.
And it says here, what we approved was the maximum budget for both facilities, design services, construction, and additional township soft cost is $9.6 million. And when was the addendum issued?
I can pull it up here in a second.
And did we approve that at a board meeting?
The addendum was not approved at a board meeting.
Okay,
No.
Thank you. That's where I'm getting my numbers from.
Sure.
Thank you.
Well, if anybody read the Colerain Township events, we got a inside pickleball court, and that will be open noon to 3 Tuesdays and Thursdays. It's also at the Clippard YMCA, Wednesdays and Fridays, noon to 3. And there is a group of individuals that meet Monday, Wednesday, Friday over here, between 8:30 and 9:30, and if you want to pick up a game. And if you'd like to learn how to play pickleball, there is Gary and Kathy Stigler that is giving Pickleball Session 101 lessons. So that's one of the wonderful things that happened in Colerain this week. And the other one is we started our solar project. We started our installation of solar panels this week, and hopefully we will start seeing that 29% decrease in our electric bills. October 1st is Think Pink, breast cancer awareness, and I implore every woman out there to get a mammogram. You have much better prognosis as the early diagnosis. Sorry, can't speak tonight. And then we did have the ribbon cutting on Dunlett Grove on September 15th. It's a Ryan subdivision. It's a 2-bedroom townhouse condo with an attached garage. They start in the 250s, and they've sold 6 of them. So progress in Colerain in lots of different areas. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. A busy week, a busy 2 weeks. It kind of diving head first into the budget and budget issues. One of the discussions I had with Chief Mueller kind of circled back and paid some dividends. I talked to Hamilton County Health Advisor, Hamilton County Health, Greg Kesterman, and he connected us with Mercy Hospital, and we're working to work on kind of a community paramedicine program to reduce the number of calls. And it would be, and we're still kind of working on what that model would look like But, one of the things that I noticed diving headfirst into the budget is that I believe that the delivery method of services that we provide needs to be changed. There needs to be a disruptor here, or we're going to just continue to get more and more and more calls, as we'll find out with police who get 44,000 calls a year. I've talked to, I think, almost every department head with my expectation that going forward through the next, through this budget, I'm looking for some haircuts and some discretionary spending cuts on non-salary issues, so that we can reduce those. I think that I'd like to, in a perfect world. I know that I'm meeting with, we're having a big budget meeting. I'd like the idea of really starting at a zero-based budget and going from there. I know that that's probably a difficult thing to do when we're talking about this amount of money. And one thing that in the tense of disrupting, one thing I talked to police about is perhaps the ability to maybe change where the impound lot is located behind the senior center, and free up that land for whatever, to perhaps sell and add to funds. And then I had an interesting discussion with the chief of police in personnel recruitment and retainment issues that are somewhat significant. From it, I learned that we have lost now 24 total officers since 2021. If you figure that out on a basis of what it costs to hire, recruit, and onboard, that's $80,000 per officer on average. We've spent, if you multiply 24 by 80,000, you're at almost $2 million. Right now, on a 61-person police staff, a police officer roster, we're missing, and this actually, the scary thing about this is I have to look and check because the number's gone up 2 or 3 times since Chief and I talked. We have 12 openings, and we know statistically then, and again, this is just kind of an average statistic, if we filled those 12 openings, to onboard and train those would be $960,000, but we also know that statistically, by the end of the first year, if we filled them all today, those 12 officer positions, 3.5 will need to be filled the next year because somewhere around 30% quit and go somewhere else at the end of the first year. Some startling things that I did find out: if you take starting salaries of Colerain police officers and compare them across the board, in Springfield, you're going to make the first year. And I know that, for a lot of people, well, is that really a lot of money? Your first year of any job, it's a lot of money, and it's a lot of money, period. Springfield Township makes $11,000 more. Westchester, $12,500 more. Miami Township, Claremont, $15,000, Union, $15,000, Delhi, $15,000. Greene makes $24,000 a year more in the first year. That might explain why we're having such a difficult time recruiting people, is that we're just not in the ballpark. And in fact, if you take an officer who may start today at Colerain, like the one that we just swore in, and if he had started at Greene from 22 to 2028, according to the contract numbers now, he would make an extra $165,000 working for Greene. That's real money for folks that are putting their life kind of on the line every day. One of the things that I heard, and I get this, I am all for debt-free, but I'm also for, I can't have a police department without police officers. I can't have fire department without fire and EMS. Part of the strategy when I first started here 3 years ago is I noticed that we're facing a salary issue. And COVID absolutely took it and multiplied it by 10 that year, 2021 especially. And we had never really, we'd hit 2 TIFs that were related to commercial properties, but we did an omnibus TIF and got $16 million in TIF revenue set up that's going to start coming in 2024, 2025, to the point that if we want to hire new officers, if we decide on using funds that come, the ARPA funds, instead of paying cash for the firehouses, that is really not a one and done. It's a bridge to the other TIF funds. And in my view, You know, I've gotten lots of calls, some mischaracterizations of what this has looked like. You know, I've pretty much, I've been embedded in budget and police and fire, and we've had discussions on every possible way to try to work this to make it look better in the future and to make it a sustainable model. The problem is, we're stuck in a circle right now. Each time we lose an officer, we got to find an officer. And if we can't find them, we got to double down on overtime. The amount of overtime that we're just hemorrhaging because we don't have a full staff is incredible as well. And some of these costs, like the onboarding costs, are something that you don't look at a balance sheet and find, but we know they exist because we know that we know that we have to train them and provide up training and things like that. You know, and to put it in the fire, the same thing, same issues in fire, which hopefully we're in the midst of negotiating of a new contract, so hopefully that would solve some of these issues. But looking at the data from fire, I think it's 40, fire and EMS from 2020, 49 part-time and 23 career that have left. This puts stress on the system. It puts stress on the employees we have. It puts stress on the overtime. It puts stress on administrative, trying to hire and onboard these folks. And I think that we owe these first responders a little bit more than just kind of they've been the kind of the sense I got in speaking to individuals, and I wanted to go to the roll call because I wanted to look officers in the eye. I wanted to shake them shake their hands. I wanted to talk to them. At one point in one of them, I asked Chief to leave because I wanted to hear what they had to say as individuals. And even then, I'm like, if you don't feel comfortable, email the chief or email me. And we agreed that we would cut out that chain of command so that it was a frank and honest discussion. And what I get is that this 24 is not the end of police officers leaving. It's the beginning of them, and a lot of police officers are probably watching this right now on what we're discussing and saying, "Why should I stay?" And I got to be honest with the ones that are watching. I don't know. Why should you? I mean, I look at this and I look at the difference that $160,000 would make in a police officer's lifetime over a 4 or 5 year period. So I think that that's going to be part of the discussion when we get to the fire and into the firehouses, and I think it's a moral question that we need to face. But we will have those discussions as we move on, and I can provide more data than anybody would ever want to look at. And we didn't just talk about salaries either. We also talked about personnel matters and changing some of the models, because I believe that this is an opportunity if we're going to try to put people close to what they want to get paid. It's an opportunity to kind of change the model how we deliver this so that we could get to a more efficient manner. And I've had a number of calls and emails that have really been it's been kind of it's just been kind of sad how my position on this has been mischaracterized over and over again. I mean, some people were on top of it and said, "Hey, this is what you're doing." Hey, this is what we're facing here. It was an honest give and take, but it's stunning as to the effort that some have gone to kind of paint this as some kind of wild spending spree kind of thing. I mean, I guess if paying our police the appropriate salary is that, then I guess I'm the wild spender here. But I think it's important. So I will end on that with my report, and I'm sure we will discuss this even more. I did have one other thing for you that I think we need to put in either old business. So when we approved Mr. McElravy's contract, we didn't approve it as the contractual amount. We approved it as an hour amount, and the two don't match. So can we do a motion? I guess we could do a motion later in old business to approve the contractual amount, or to make the two align.
Yeah, I mean, the difference there is probably rounding, is my assumption. And so you're either going to round up on the contractual amount to a different number, or round down on the contractual amount to a different number.
Yeah, I don't have that data in front of me. Let me go back and look at that, and I'll talk to you offline about that maybe in the next couple of days.
That honestly is the reason why I think you'll start to see more of our documents showing the hourly amount, because it does not equal out evenly. So if somebody makes $40,000 a year, that's like, I don't know, $20 and a couple cents, and then a bunch of extra little fractions afterwards. So it's much cleaner just to have the hourly amount.
So, okay, so going forward then, I mean, we can, that consistency will be hourly, I guess?
That is my preference, because
Okay.
I think it's so much cleaner for payroll.
And with regard to the org chart, there was some discussion from a citizen at the end of the meeting last time about something not appearing on the org chart, and my point was, well, we pulled it off the hiring. Does it then need to be taken off? What is your preference? I know with Mr. Mills, he had one preference to how he handled the org chart and did through, and I know that you may have that or a different preference, but I want to kind of set the guidelines for that.
So one of the issues with the org chart is how it is created and who creates it, and that is currently what we are trying to figure out, is who actually updates the pictures, right? So that's why and I think I showed when we went through the roster last time, the roster really is, to me, more of the Bible, because it lists every single position. You're much more likely to have a typo or something like that on the picture as you're moving things around and dragging it in InDesign and other design formats like that. But we're currently working on that. The person that did that is no longer here.
Okay, so then I would take it that going forward that you know, and again, Mr. Milton, one way, whatever, Apple, six dozen this way, half a dozen, whatever the saying is, I can't think of it.
It will be coming back. It's just we've got to.
But you like new high, you like the roster, that for
I
you.
think the roster is cleaner.
Okay. Whatever you want on that is fine with me, and unless one of my fellow trustees has a difference of opinion. Not necessarily, but
I just have one quick comment. Nobody's arguing about the need for police and fire. That is the primary duty of the township. And the answer to police and fire's budget is not in the police and fire budget. It's, do you want another pickleball court, or do you want another cop? Do you want solar, or do you want another police officer or fire officer? The answer to the budget for police and fire is not looking at the police and fire budget. It's all of the stuff around it that is not the primary goal of the township. I just wanted to make that comment, because I understand where you're coming from and I support what you're doing 100%. That's not the discussion point.
and I will just kind of point out that the discussion I had was about discretionary spending. Is that stuff is that as I've kind of told Mr. Weckback and all the department heads, get out the scissors, because discretionary spending is we're gonna cut that to, we're gonna try to find as much as we can from that. So I agree. All right, moving forward, then we have new business, public safety.
Yep. And Chief Cordy will be handling the first two items.
Chief, now that I've publicized your salary to the entire world,
Well, I appreciate the support, and I appreciate all three of you taking the time to listen to the police department and our concerns, so thank you for that. Jumping directly into this, we have a resolution declaring nuisance and ordering abatement. This resolution allows for the removal of uncontrolled vegetation and/or refuge for the following properties: 8240 Royal Heights Drive, 7992 Cheviot Road, 2723 Barthas Place, 7072 Daybreak Court, 7095 Daybreak Court, 2907 Sheldon Drive, 3622 Veneer Drive, 9031 Zollner Drive, 9981 Sky Ridge Drive, 12092 Westerly Drive. Recommend adoption of this resolution.
I motion we adopt the resolution declaring nuisance and ordering abatement at the properties the chief has described.
I'll second.
okay, so just a point of information here, I'm lost. Is it 13? I can't seem to dig through all this. Page 13? So, page 8, okay. It all kind of looks the same with my Walgreens glasses.
Hey, I got your other pair.
Yeah, I know. Maybe if I put them both on, I can see. Okay, so we have a motion and a second to allow for the removal of uncontrolled vegetation on the refuse at the following properties, or at the properties that the chief listed. Is there any discussion?
None.
Okay, so I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit here, Mr. Weckback. I see Vernier back on there. And I just happen to pass it every day. It's not that I don't know who owns it or lives there. But we had a little bit of a discussion last week about the fact that there seems to be some communication breakdown with us voting and these things getting abated. And it seems like we've got this cleared up. And Chief, we had the same discussion. It seems like we have this cleared up.
That is my understanding.
Okay, because Vernier is still sitting there with the weeds above, and the poor little kids are trying to cut it down, so. All right, so I appreciate everything you do with these and getting these abated. I know it's a difficult thing to do, and I appreciate the hard work. So, any other comments?
None.
Ms. Orich?
Yes.
Mr. Unger?
Yes.
Mr. Waller?
Yes, that passes 3-0 for the properties listed to be abated.
Next one up, we have a resolution declaring a junk motor vehicle. Recommend adoption of a motion to declare and order abatement of a junk motor vehicle at the following property. It looks like it's not listed on here, but it's 8071 Peacock Drive. It is a red Mercury Mariner, 1999, with Ohio license plate EMZ 3420, Edward Mary Zebra 3420. Recommend adoption of the resolution.
I motion we adopt the resolution declaring the vehicle located at 8071 Peacock Drive as a junk motor vehicle and causing for the removal of the vehicle.
I'll second.
All right, any discussion?
None.
Get them off.
So let me just point out that the resolution itself, which I think is required, has the actual address on it. It's in the, usually, the department heads will do a pre-page, and that, it's just missing on the section that says public safety, police, and then goal. But on the actual resolution itself, which is required, I think, through ORC, they do have the Peacock Drive 8071, so we are compliant there. Any other comments?
None.
All right, Mr. Baker?
Ms. Orich?
Yes.
Mr. Unger?
Yes.
Mr. Waller?
Yes, that passes 3-0.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Public services.
Yes, Board, the next item is intended to be a discussion for you all on traffic calming. So I believe at either the last meeting or the meeting before that, when we were discussing the 5-year road plan, it made sense for us to come back and have a conversation around which, if any of those streets, are ones that we believe would be best suited to put any type of traffic calming in at this day and time when we go to actually repave the street. My recommendation on this has been to go out and do a study to actually see what the effect of the speeding is before we take action, to the extent that the board has a street or two or all of them that they would like for us to do one of these studies on. That direction would help us to make sure that we put those signs up to collect as much data as possible. Alternatively, if the board would like to just install traffic calming of some sort, please let us know what that is, and we will gladly work that into the bid specs. I've got the list of streets up, and I can certainly pull up a Google map for your preference if you prefer, and we can take a look at what those streets are one by one.
Could you tell us, and I don't know if you know the answer to this, so what would be the difference in cost in putting on when you're doing the repaving?
You know, it's going to depend on the sophistication of the pavement contractor. Some of them some of them have more experience in putting in these types of devices than others. The asphalt itself is probably not going to be a huge cost. It's more just whether or not they can engineer it, and you may potentially turn away some bidders just because they may not want to have to deal with the headache if they've got, say, 10 other jobs that they're looking at.
What are all the types of the calming that you can install?
Sure. So it could be something as simple as a speed bump. It could be speed tables. It could be speed cushions. That's what we put in on Niagara. It could be you telling us to significantly narrow the road. It could be medians in the roadways. It could be bump outs on curbs. So in crosswalk areas, you could create these, nice bump outs like this. It could be chicanes. There are a lot of different potential traffic calming devices that we could do. In the past, we did speed cushions because we felt that provided the best response to our fire and EMS apparatus, so that they did not have to have the constant hitting on their shocks as they were going through some of these areas, assuming that they hit the grooves just right. Those are just different options.
Right, so we are requiring that through Solver, the cut through Solver, and the traffic calming being the...
Traffic calming for them, in terms of what they approved at the subdivision plan at the county level, is to put in a knuckle. So it's not even any of these devices per
Right.
se. It's just making the road, instead of it being straight, go down and then to the right. So they may still have some issues that they may wish for us to address later on.
Mm-hmm.
But that's for new construction. That's not going to...
That's new construction, and that's subdivision regulations, which are outside of our control.
Right.
Okay.
So we could come back with, looking at the streets that we approved at our last meeting, and what you're asking is for us to come back with any
Yeah.
recommendations on which of those streets we might think that traffic calming would help, or where we're getting the complaints from, or to have you go out, or your,
And do a study. Yep,
Appointee.
yep. And I can read through the streets just in
Right.
case it
and that's fine, I know they're in the last agenda.
yeah. Yeah, so the streets were Butterwick Drive, Gila Court, Havernole Drive, Tripoli Drive, Westerly Drive, Renetta Drive, and Menominee Drive. And Menominee being south of Springdale, not the entire stretch.
Okay.
So, one thing, I've never been accused of being a slow driver, I don't think. And the number of people that pass me on a daily basis on the way to and from work, and I'm going probably speed limit or chief earmuffs, speed limit or maybe 10 miles over. It's incredible. And, I go down Old Colerain and then up Old Colerain, and every day I read about accidents with pedestrians, and every day I see between 10 and 20 people just crossing wherever. Not to say that that means you hit them, and not to say that some people haven't been hit in actual traffic, crosswalks and stuff, but I just think that, I don't know where this came, it seems a little bit unhinged with traffic.
Driver, just two, coming here tonight, two people went right through the red light.
I apologize for that once.
Okay. So I think it's all over. It's not just speeding, it's traffic lights. There's so many people that not adhering to any of the rules on the road anymore.
It's incredible,
I've noticed more and more that all the violations.
On the roads, we all have a front row seat to the complete unraveling of society.
Oh,
So I don't know that my overall point is that we could have studies, and I think maybe
Yeah.
this was mistaken said, but, I don't need a study to look out my window and see what's happening, and there's significant amount of pedestrian injuries, significant amount of fatal crashes that are occurring, and I don't know if the numbers are up. I don't have that. I feel gut-wise they are, but like I said, I've never had people en masse pass me and turn left in front of me, and it's really chaos, and it's everywhere. It's Colerain, it's Cincinnati, it's Green, it's Columbus, it's everywhere I go. I don't. Maybe in my older age I've become a slow, careful driver, but the dents in my car would suggest otherwise.
What is the cost of the feasibility study?
Just the maybe 20, 30 minutes for us to put up the sign that then collects data to tell us
Okay.
what.
Okay. So
And what the data tells us is the volume, right? So what percentage of motorists are speeding and by how much. So the value in that is it helps us to really gauge how significant of an issue there is. If the average speed is about 25, yes, that means that you're going to have people going probably 5 over and 5 under. But if the average speed is 35, then that means probably everybody is speeding insignificantly, or if the average speed is 20. And I think that's where just kind of trying to find that balance, right? Because to put speed and traffic calming on every single street in the township is going to be extremely expensive. But if we're able to target those that have issues and have significant issues, and one of the things that as a board, I don't know that I've gotten a consensus on is how do we address if you do have a street that maybe doesn't have an overall speeding issue, but has one knucklehead that's going 60 every day.
Mm-hmm.
And we could put in traffic calming, and that may calm that person going 60 down, may not.
Or we'll put an officer there, and a couple tickets will calm them down.
It might, but as soon as that officer leaves, they go back to their habits. And so that is a difficulty. To my knowledge at this time, I believe most of our pedestrian related auto accidents happen on county and state roads. Mm-hmm. And that makes sense given the high volume of speed on those roads, because instead of it being 25 for the posted speed limits, it's typically 35 or 45. And that's where, the direction of the board being that with our speed policy or our traffic calming policy, we like to study just to make sure that if we're putting them in, we're putting them in where they are needed and not necessarily in every single spot.
And I'll show a little bit of a bias here. If you look at politics is taking who gets what, when, where, why, and how, and taking limited resources and assigning them. I think something that would go into impact as a variable too is the number of children on that street.
Sure.
I think that if you have a street that has a whole lot of kids, that's gonna, if given two streets, both of them have the same speeding problem, but this one has a lot more kids, I put it here first.
Well, same with school districts. I
Yeah.
mean, when the school zones, you see people fly through school zones constantly.
And something else to consider in all this too is number, right? So number of traffic calming devices. So when you look at a road like Menominee, that's 0.8 of a mile versus a road like Gila, that is, 0.19 of a mile. And so, are you looking to put in, let's say you're doing speed cushions, are you looking to put in 5 or 6 speed cushions on Menominee? Are you looking to put in just 1 or 2? And are they going to have the effect that you think that they're going to have versus more? We tested that with Niagara. I think we put in 3 over a small stretch. And so, what we found when we were doing studies is you need to place them about 500 feet apart. So that means you're going to be placing several on some of these streets if we want to do it the right way. Because just placing one at the front or the back, you're going to have people speeding in the middle. And so those are other things to consider as we have this conversation. And
Has it helped on Niagara?
so the speeding at
I've heard that it has from some residents there.
So the numbers that we had, I think, before were that the average speed was about 26, and then it was about 24 after. And so that's the question, and that's why I think this is a good question for you all is, what is the number? What is the volume? How fast is too fast? Because those really are policy decisions that I think you all should be making around when and where we put these in.
And the speed limit is 25.
25, yep.
In all those streets.
Yep.
And I'm happy to throw up our speed signs and do a little study and then take any ideas from the folks that live on next year's road plan streets and come back at the next meeting and discuss it. Is that what the goal of this discussion item is?
Yeah, if that's the direction of the board for us to go and place those speed signs in those areas, it'll probably take until the second meeting of October before we would have any hard data, and that will be pretty fresh data for us.
And our goal is to put this out for bid in January so that.
Yep.
Do we have any data from Chief about what streets the police think need them more? Mm-hmm. Laura Linda's not even on there.
Right, they
Right.
which aren't necessarily.
I would consider what the police seem to feel is a detrimental zone. Because I get calls from all kind of neighbors saying, they'd like speed bumps. And so I didn't know if you had a call volume of where your most complaints are. Okay, I'm just not giving you more work, but it would help in my decision-making of this.
All right, any other, I think that all those ideas are good, and,
So are we asking him to come back with, or we're going to come back and,
Well, you said you wanted to come back, yeah.
he's going to come back with some speed data studies of
Right, and then-
those on next year's road plan streets.
And
I will come back at the October 25th meeting with some data. We'll work with PD to get those
Okay.
installed as soon as possible.
and PD will kind of eyeball it and do a
And guide-
quantitative
Yeah, guide.
or qualitative look at which ones they think.
Mm-hmm.
All right, thank you. Mr. Miller, Development. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Board. So this entire year, I think, we have been going through this exercise of properly passing initial resolutions and notifying owners and lien holders of properties that have become a public nuisance and a danger to our communities. And we are in the process of, we're getting closer to demolition on that first round. And so we you have all done all of the exercises, and we're waiting on final notice from the state of Ohio on the matching funds, and we'll be able to execute an RFP on the contract for demo on those that remain. And so tonight, this item for 4519 Pool Road is starting that process on another demolition. At this point, we do not have the guarantee or notice from the state for matching funds on this. But We have been told that they expect another tranche of funds to be coming through the state down to the local communities, and so we thought it would be prudent to go ahead and start the process on this particular house. There is another that we are gathering the final information on. We'll be back before the board with it, but this one is virtual burnout. It's just a shell of a house. The facts around the fire are very unfortunate, but nonetheless, we thought it would be a good idea to bring it to the board at this point for the initial demolition resolution, and then we'll start the process of notifying all the proper people and posting those, and come back with a public hearing and finish that process in a few months. So this is a recommendation for passage for the initial demolition for 4519 Pool Road.
All right, are there any motions?
I motion that we approve the resolution for the demolition of the property at 4519 Pool Road.
I second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Yes, and what this says, to encapsulate what David just said, is what we are doing is telling the folks that own that house, hear ye, you have 30 days to get that torn down. And so that would start the clock today and move to approximately October 27th. So they can tear it down at their own expense and clear the lot before October 27th, and then after that, we will go out and solicit proposals to have a qualified contractor to tear it down.
Well, we will, there'll be an interim step in that, and having a public hearing, and we'll have the fire department come, and there is attached to this resolution is a report from Captain that is declaring it a public nuisance, and so we'll again go through that process of having a public hearing and notifying, publishing paper, et cetera. So that it'll take a few more months, but yes, it is, Mr. Unger, that first initial notice to the owner of this property that it is in need of demolition, and we're instructing them to do so.
It's been burnt out with no roof for over a year, hasn't it? I don't know when the exact date of the fire was, but there's nothing salvageable in the house.
Yeah, we're about a year, and I believe my understanding is there was no insurance related to the
I did
property.
not know that. I didn't know the behind the scenes.
And if the owner should decide that they want to, they still can work it out with the township. The cost of that then gets assessed. What happens to the let's say that they don't fall through and we have to tear it down. What happens to the actual raw land itself? Does it revert to the land bank? Or?
So if they pay their property tax assessments, it's their property still.
Right,
So
if they don't, it just goes into the...
If they don't, they'll go into foreclosure, tax foreclosure, and eventually it'll either be bought up by somebody else or it will go to the land bank, and the land bank usually gives us an opportunity at that point, if we see a need for the property, to acquire it ourselves.
It's a nice piece
Right,
of
but
property.
That's going to be $10,000 or $12,000 looking at it to tear it down. So we would assess that $12,000 against the property taxes.
We would, but when it does get to the land bank, those back taxes get cleared.
I mean, if the owner decided, hey, I want that lot
Yes.
to resell it.
And I think the significant thing that I'm trying to point out too is this is not a quick process. The last thing I want to be involved with is government seizure, and that's essentially what's happening here. And it is a long process with various opportunities for the landowner to insert themselves into the process and reach some kind of conclusion.
That is correct. I think we have very carefully gone through the due process and well, for the batch that we're currently scheduling demolition on, and so I think that's important. It is, as you said, it's a very serious thing to in essence take somebody's property, and so they've had plenty of notice and opportunity to right the wrong, and so this is last resort.
Any other discussion?
None.
All right, we'll move that to a vote. Mr. Baker?
Ms. Orch?
Yes.
Mr. Unger?
Yes.
Mr. Waller?
Yes, that passes 3-0. The Facade Improvement Program.
Sure. So this is the next item is bringing back an issue that we discussed 2 weeks ago about a proposal for a facade improvement program in Colerain Township. And you had some good questions. Who has done this in the past? Who are some peer jurisdictions around here that have done that? And so did the homework and provided that report. And so the peer city examples are in your packet. And we looked, I spoke to the administrators of the programs in Covington, in Springfield Township, and in Sharonville. And so it was an interesting exercise for me as well, because they're all three different. And so when we put ours together, we looked at a variety of programs and put forth ideas, again, for your consideration. Covington is the largest that we found, with $150,000 a year that they put in. They have a building that they own, and the rents that they receive go back into this fund. And so this fund in and of itself is not just Facade, but it's also a rent subsidy program to help new businesses move into or expand in Covington. So again, it's a matching grant program that they use for that purpose, but this fund also is used for the facades, and it is a 50% matching. They provided numbers from 2018 to this year, 9 grants, 9, 8, 14, and 9 this year thus far. And so they're, right around that $50,000 mark. That fund is funded not only from the rent subsidy, the rents off of their public building, but their general fund, I believe. Yep. And so that is a fund that just revolves each year, and it's not forced to be drained every year. I provided the 3 pictures of the buildings. You can see the changes.
They are significant.
Yeah. Covington is probably closer to Colerain in the sense of age of buildings. It's probably a little bit older. Yeah. And so they have historical guidelines in some particular streets or neighborhoods where we wouldn't have those. But some of theirs are required to conform to historical guidelines. Others are just asked to consult with a historical board just to ensure that there's some compatibility, but the requirements may not necessarily be on that owner. Sharonville provided one picture here.
They had 11 and 21.
Right. So they provide $50,000 from their capital fund each year for their program. When they score their applications, they will look at targeted areas of their city and provide a little bit higher scoring, and use that to help develop some areas that are a little more tired. And we could probably find those in Colerain as well. Springfield Township, I thought was interesting as well. They smaller, Springfield Township has a much smaller commercial corridor than we do. Not many are going to be as big as us, right? But Winton Road is probably their primary commercial corridor, so they're not going to have as many opportunities. But and they only did, let's say about 3 a year, and started in 2018. I thought one interesting aspect of their program is that they will go and do business retention and expansion visits to some businesses that actually could use a little help and encouragement. And they'll maybe target some code enforcement challenges with some of those grants, and they'll partner with those businesses. And they've had success in doing that, again, with dollars that have been set aside for that. They have found success. And so interesting aspect of just going on here in Colerain. Did a BRE visit yesterday with a business in an area down in Groesbeck. Again, very tired face on the building, and I really wondered if they were even open. It was that tired, and I did not know what to expect because the front was not in the greatest shape. Had to go around the back and just walk right in. Got to talking. Interesting, he said this was the first time in 40 years he's ever had a visit from the township.
Mm-hmm.
But he was very interested in the program. And
Mhm.
I just said, I discussed how business was going, went through the battery of questions, but then I said, something you might be interested that we're going to be discussing tomorrow night. And he said, you know what, that's exactly what I'd love to do. He wants to get rid of this big lollipop sign out front, do a little monument out front, and potentially sublease part of his building. So he thinks that would help. So I think something like this is of interest. It could be a benefit to some targeted areas in the township. So that's where we're at. So the proposal before you is a motion to create the facade improvement program, or we could count this as a second reading, and you could make some more recommendations. We are at your disposal.
I like the idea that you're going out to some of these dilapidated or tired places. That would help. But I guess since we have a budget meeting coming up, is this in our, see how much is in our budget?
Well, I think this motion would establish it but not fund it.
Right.
At this point,
Yeah,
yeah. So that funding decision would be made with regard
Right.
to the budget. So, I mean, it's neither here nor there if you want to establish it and not fund it, or wait till after budget, or.
That's,
And some key considerations as you are thinking about budgets and budget dollars are if you are going to limit the program to, say, CDBG eligible projects versus any township dollars. CDBG has different requirements, different limits in terms of geographies. But if it were general dollars, then that means the program is more expansive and can be used in different areas of the township. So that is a key consideration for staff, especially as we look at these guidelines.
And one discussion we had that I gave an awful lot of thought to is that I not make the decision, the trustees not make the decision as to what buildings. And I see that you have in here, I can't find it now, but it talked about being a decision at the administrative level. I think it's important that we're removed from that at all costs.
And my intent would be any of these that would be approved would come up on a consent agenda for transparency purposes so that you all were aware of what was approved.
Okay.
okay.
And can we discuss it still?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Yeah, I would, I don't see where we would fund this, and we're gonna have budget meetings individually next week. I don't see where we would fund this out of the general fund. If there's community block development grants from the county, and that's how you wanna move forward with this, I'd consider that, but I mean, we've got a lot of stuff to talk about with the general fund, and, the things that were mentioned earlier, police and fire, and what help they might need, and how that might trump this, but if you can look into what the availability of community block development grants is, I would be more inclined to consider this.
Well, do you like the program? I think the program's a nice program if we can eventually find some money to fund it.
Well, and that's where, if we started with CDBG, that makes it more of a pilot program. We get to test it out. We get to test it in sort of a targeted area, knowing where our low mod areas are in the township right now. That would probably be Colerain Avenue in the Groesbeck neighborhood as you start to go north. And so we could test it, see if we like it. And if we like it and there are other areas of the township that are ineligible but could also use said program, then we could maybe talk more about general fund dollars. So. If the board does prefer to go that route, we just need to know that. So when we put out the final program guidelines to the public, it's not somebody like, say, on the map here, we've got a spot all the way out in western Colerain that, just knowing what I know about CDBG, would probably be ineligible, so we would not include that in the map.
So the community development, but CDBG, what would be the opportunity cost of using that for this program? Would it cost us other projects?
It's always a trade-off, right? So we've got always a number of projects in the pipeline that have been approved per community development block grant, one of which is implementation of the Groesbeck plan. And I believe this is something that came up quite a bit in the Grossbeck plan as well. And so there is some alignment there in terms of how we're evaluating what those dollars would go toward. Other projects that we've funded through CDBG have been sidewalk maintenance and repairs. That revolving fund is now stood up and should start, to be self-sufficient moving forward, so we could probably ramp back some of those dollars. We've not used it for things like roadway improvements. Other communities have done that. We've used it for things like property demolition, so blighted properties and removing them. I would anticipate that we would still look to do that. I'm trying to think what else is in our CDBG moving forward, but next year is the last year of this current cycle, so we'll be up for new projects in 24.
Okay, what is the pleasure of the board with regard to this then?
I think I'd rather wait until the budget meetings.
So,
Well, we could still approve the program and just see how to fund it and budget it later.
so we have a motion and a second to establish a facade.
We don't.
We don't,
do not
okay.
have a motion or
All right.
We're still in discussion. yeah.
So then we would have to motion to establish it or motion to table it till the next meeting.
I motion that we table it till the next meeting.
All right, there's,
Okay, I'll second.
all right, there's a motion and a second to table it. Thank you for the motion, because I think if we said nothing, it just died.
I
We
think,
don't want that.
no, I don't want it to die. Yeah.
Is there any further discussion with regard to this? Mr. Baker?
Ms. Orch?
Yes.
Mr. Unger?
Yes.
Mr. Waller?
Yes, that vote is 3-0, that we table that till next week when we have more, next meeting after we have more budget information. But I thank you so much, Mr. Springsteen, for the work. It's not an indictment against the program, it's the fiscal indictment.
Nice work, thank you.
All right, we have a number of items from administration, but I think, are we going to have Chief?
Yeah, so if Chief Walls would like to come up and speak a little bit about the need for the 2 fire stations, and then after that, I believe the next 4 items on the agenda were brought forward by different trustees in different capacity, and so I will leave that to you all to make said motions, but at least for intro into the fire station need, Chief Walls.
So Chief is going to go over what some of the, why.
All right, thank you. I'll see if I can answer the why. So in our strategic plan last year, we identified in our strength, weaknesses, opportunities, and challenges portion of that aging infrastructure, that being facilities and apparatus, and in particular facilities, were both a weakness and a challenge. And as an objective in our strategic plan, we had identified the need to replace buildings, apparatus, and equipment with a priority on buildings. Likewise, with the Township Facilities Master Plan, it was identified in there that in particular Station 26, which is on Galbraith Road, and Station 102, which is at Kemper and Colerain, were beyond the need for replacement. To talk about these 2 fire stations in particular, so Station 26 was built in 1966, and it was the home of the Grossbeck Volunteer Fire Department. Station 102 was built, there are parts of it about 1930, parts about 1954-ish, and parts of it about 1975-ish, and it was the home of the Dunlap Volunteer Fire Department. So those 2 volunteer fire stations, Grossbeck Volunteer Fire Department and the Dunlap Volunteer Fire Department, were never intended to be inhabited 24/7, 365, and likewise have been remodeled any number of times. For those that were here when they discussed the facilities master plan, I believe that the gentleman that was here described the conditions at Station 26 as dungeon-like,
Deplorable.
quote unquote, dungeon-like. And so we have anywhere between 8 and 10 people crammed into Station 26. We have upwards of 4 people at Station 102. Looking at the need then for replacement and relocation, if we replace Station 102 and relocated it, we will see a 750% increase in the number of residents that we will reach within 4 minutes. That is beyond the word significant. That is huge. In addition, with that relocation, it would take some of the pressure off of Station 25 and help share in that workload. In addition, then, it would help take off some of that workload for Station 26 as well. With the move of Station 26, it likewise will have an impact on our response times. So, you know, looking at being bold and transformative, for lack of a better way to put it, you know, we have an opportunity here to take what was the 2 original volunteer fire stations in Colerain Township and bring them up to date and replace them with fire stations that are functional, that are designed around our operations, but yet aren't Taj Mahals, because the important thing to me is having fire stations that fit our need and have people inside of them, not some $20 Taj Mahal that has nobody inside of it. And with that, anybody have any questions about the whys or the what fors?
As per Hamilton County, they have, Galbraith Road is built in 1952. I just looked those up because we have had almost 70 years on both of those stations. We've outlived the longevity of both those buildings. And once again, they were designed for all-men buildings.
That's correct. Yes, in 1960, it was an all-male volunteer fire service.
And we have many more women coming into the EMT side of and then the program you would like to enact would have more women coming into the program. And so I think our fire stations have to accommodate that also.
Yes, if you look at one of the vision statements in the strategic plan, it addresses becoming a more diverse and inclusive organization, and we're moving in that direction with the addition of a number of women here in Colerain Township.
Mm-hmm.
I think that 2 years ago, I rode around with Chief Cook. And we looked at these stations, and I spent a day and sat down at Galbraith Road for about an hour and a half, and the door kept opening and closing, and it seemed like that particular day that the squad was going out about every 5 minutes. It was a busy time. Back in the day, there used to probably be a lot more fire runs and less EMS runs, and that's probably flipped, where it's a lot more EMS because, you know, with modern construction, there's probably less need for the fire truck and more need for the EMS. I think we're about to enter into a very respectful and informative discussion of one of the hot button issues of the day. So I agree that both of them need to be replaced.
And I agree as well. It's not a want, it's a need. It's a need.
You can even explain the sewer system in 26 was horrible.
We routinely have to have a Roto-Rooter come in and address that issue. On occasion, you can even stand in raw sewage and take a shower.
So just to let you know what we have our firefighters doing.
So
letting in.
It's not very frequent,
Yep.
but when those things happen, we take care of it as expeditious as possible.
Additional questions? All right. Thank you, Chief.
Thanks, Chief.
Thank you.
Mr. Weckbeck.
So I think the first motion was requested by Trustee Unger.
So I'd appreciate a second so we can have this discussion. I'd like to motion to construct Fire Station 26 and 102 and pay for the construction with existing funds and no bonds.
So we have a motion to construct Fire Station 26 and 102 and pay for construction with existing funds and no bonds. Is there a second?
I'm asking for a second so we can have a discussion about it.
All right, hearing none, that dies. Number B, letter B.
I'd like to motion that we construct Fire Station 102 and pay for the construction with existing funds and no bonds.
So we have a motion to construct Fire Station 102 and pay for construction with existing funds and no bonds. Is there a second for that motion?
And I'd like to have a discussion, and I would appreciate a second.
Hearing none, we go to item C.
I'd motion that we would construct Fire Station 26 and pay for construction with existing funds and no bonds.
So we have a motion by Mr. Unger to construct Fire Station 26 and pay for construction with existing funds and no bonds. Is there a second?
And I'd appreciate a second so we can have a discussion.
Hearing none, that dies. Item D. It's a resolution to sell bonds for the construction of Fire Station 26 and 102. Is there any motion or second on that?
I will motion the resolution to sell bonds for the construction of the Fire Station 26 and 102.
I will second on the resolution to sell bonds for the construction of Fire Station 26 and 102. Discussion.
Sure. I'm disappointed that we couldn't discuss the no bonds option. Going back to April 27th, at the meeting just before April 27th, we voted to release a scope of services for architectural and design services for both of those stations. That, which passed 3-0, and that is in tonight's agenda. And it talks about we're looking for the services of a qualified architectural design or planning firm. Item 2, general information. Colerain Township has secured funding to replace existing Fire Station 26 and Fire Station 102. It very clearly says here, and what was presented to the trustees was that Colerain Township has secured that funding. These existing facilities do not meet the current needs of the township's fire and EMS operations and are in need of replacement. And so the administration came to us and said, yes, with the COVID money and the bonds that were retired, that we're no longer paying on, when we've been out of general obligation debt since December 1st, and so that frees up $980 in the budget, and I know that everybody wants to do different things with it, so that's how Jeff Mills arrived at that conclusion. So, and the board did vote to approve that 3-0. Following up on that, on June 14th, and you can go back and watch the meeting, item 11 on that agenda, we had a nice discussion on how we would fund these stations, and if you can go back and watch it, and you will see that Mr. Wallert and myself agreed to pay cash, and at the time, Mrs. Ulrich wanted to bond them out. It's also reflected in the June 14th minutes, and through the benefit of having Waycross recording these meetings, you can clearly go back and watch that. And then based on that, on August 9th, we approved a request for quotations, and it's noted on page 39 that the 9 point, which I mentioned earlier, and then Mr. Weckbach has told me that there was an addendum issued that was not approved, was never brought to the board for approval, that it would be 12 million instead of the 9.6 million that we approved. Well, interestingly enough, if you go back to April 27th, it was 12 million. When it got changed to 9.6 million, I asked Administrator Mills about it. He said, yes, they think if we pay cash and do them both at once, that's where we get the $9.6 million at. And so we had this money in April, and it's in writing, and that's how it went out, and that's what the three of us voted on. We had the money in June, and then we had the money in August. And I realize priorities change, but I will say this, I've been here for 5 years, and all of a sudden I'm the person that's been up here the longest. And just through setting the tone of how we would run this place financially, we have eliminated our general obligation debt. And when we go into debt, bonds and debt become our first obligation. Right now, our first obligation is to pay our employees. It's not to pay a bond. And I'm going to grab a little bit of water real quick. It's not to pay a bond. When you go into debt, that bond becomes our first obligation, and paying employees becomes the second legal obligation. Bonds really limit our flexibility, especially in the case of an emergency. I remember a few years ago, we had an ice storm. We were able to send our public works crew out through several subdivisions and pay a lot of overtime to get a lot of the ice storm cleaned up. And a person, and I said this at the June meeting, and I'll say it again, people borrow money as they go through life. They might borrow money to go to college. They might borrow money to buy a house. They might borrow money to buy a car. Hopefully they save a little bit through their lifetime, and at the end of that time, they die, and that's kind of the financial life cycle of a person. And if you didn't borrow money, you might never get a car or a house or a college education. So we're not a person. We are a government entity, and we're as old as the state of Ohio. And at some point in your cycle, you quit borrowing money, or you don't buy stuff that you don't have money for. This COVID money, that's a very one-time thing, I don't know how responsible it is to spend it on ongoing operations. Those operations should come out of a dedicated fund, and that way there's reliable funding. It reminds me of back during President Clinton's administration when he came out and said, we're going to hire 100,000 new policemen. And those policemen, he gave a lot of communities, or the Congress did, gave a lot of communities money to hire policemen, but there was no money in the second year. You know, as I said, during my 5 years on this board, we have paid off all of our general obligation debt. All employees have gotten raises, and we've never had to lay anyone off. And it's just from setting the tone of how we're going to spend money here. We also made it through COVID, and unlike many members of our business community, we did not have to furlough anybody, and there's no employee that missed a single paycheck, and that's because of good financial stewardship here. We have always had successful, at the end of the day, negotiations with our employee unions. Everybody's gotten increases, and these agreements were approved by our police and fire unions. So right now, we're in the middle of approved agreements, and I understand that even though these agreements were approved by management and the unions, that it is probably time to take another look at them so we can become more competitive. And we're in these agreements, and you know, when those agreements come up, or if there's any movement on them, I'm happy to do that, but I just don't think one-time money should be spent on such a thing. And the other problem with borrowing money right now is you know, the economy's pretty much tanking. Anybody that follows the stock market, about a week ago, the prime interest rate went up another 0.75%, and it's just not a good time to take on obligations. What if next year the state cuts the funding the little bit of funding we get from them, and a lot of this federal funding dries up? We're going to really be up against the wall if we have bond payments that are due, and that becomes our first priority. One of the other things about buying bonds, and this did go out on the report that Mr. Weckbach sends out, is it's not just the bonds. There's maybe a 2% fee, and that's the answer I got in writing, if you auction at the bond auction. So that's an additional $240,000 that we would pay in auction fees. I asked a question about the sales commission. The answer I got was to be determined, but let's say it's another 2%. That's another $240,000 sales commission on $12 million worth of bonds. When you have this outstanding debt or bonds, they have to be audited every year. You know, last December, I saw a purchase order from Huntington Bank for $7,000. And I went to Jeff Mills and I said, what is this? And he goes, that's the audit fees for the bonds, the last audit fee for that last general obligation bond that we paid off December 1st. So you take that $10,000 times 30 years, that's $300,000 in audit fees. So you add up those three, that's about $780,000 in fees that we would not pay if we paid cash. And I've heard some talk about, well, let's wait until the tax increment financing benefit kicks in, and maybe we can pay these off early or refinance them. Well, if we refinance, we're going to experience all those same fees again. The company that put together the request for qualifications that we voted 3-0 on August 10th is Emerson Design, I believe. And they're a professional organization with degreed and you know, architects that are professional architects. It's not like them to make a mistake like that, and I'm disappointed that there was an addendum that went out that was not approved by the board. If we don't have the money, and if our priority is, which our employees have always been a priority, despite some of the things you hear, this is a great place to work. Yes, we don't pay as much as other places, and in fact, I didn't just start visiting the officers. I've been walking in to see them. Anytime I'm up here in the evening to sign a purchase order, I'll go back in and check on them. What I've always told them was, you know, if you ever get any problems anywhere, I will be standing right there next to you, especially if it's some sort of media deluge where we're accused of wrongdoing. The one thing the office, and I'm sure Matt and Kathy would do the same thing, but one thing that our police employees and fire employees should know, this is a great place to work, and you've got 3 trustees that will be standing right there with you if there's ever a problem. We're not the only department that's down officers. Cincinnati is down over 200 officers. the fix to that is not using one-time money. It is, we have to build it into our operating budget, and I just wish these guys would consider building at least one of these with existing funds. It would save us a lot of financing. I see here on the example that was in the packet that the first year of the payment's going to be $760,000. $570,000 of that is interest. With that $570,000, rather than sending it to a bank in New York, we could go ahead and distribute some of that money amongst our police and fire and give them the increased pay that they would need, instead of sending that increased pay to an out-of-state bank. And I don't know what else to say. I hope you guys will reconsider and at least build one of these without borrowing the money for it. So,
Thank you. I find it a little ironic that you're disappointed the discussion didn't happen when, in point of fact, it just did. And even more ironic, based upon some of the phone calls I've taken from citizens and the way that you've characterized my position on this, is more than disappointing. If you go back and, we have the benefit of Waycross. If you go back and listen to my trustee report, you'll find out why that decision, why I changed my mind on that decision. And I don't think it's a personal slight for someone to change their mind when they're given new facts. And I will tell you, when someone in your family is sick, you don't say sorry. That's going to go towards the mortgage. You try to help them. You mentioned that when the police and fire have problems, you tell them all the time that you'll stand next to them. Well, they're saying we have problems, and they need you to stand next to them on this. As far as it being one-time money for ongoing operations, yes, that's exactly right. But the TIF, it would also act as a bridge to the TIF money as it starts to come in. I mean, people are assets too, and we've already shown the amount of money that we're losing annually by having to onboard new officers. And it's just, you can point to interest, I can point to onboarding. And in the example we're given, it was based on 12 million. We have only 7.2 in ARPA funds. There's another 4.8 that needs to come from somewhere in order to fill that gap. So, in addition to the 7.2 in ARPA, we would need the other 4.8 to come from somewhere. So I think that it's the time, to pay our folks what it's worth and keep a stable police department here. Number one or number two issue among all Americans right now is crime. Period. End of discussion. They want crime to be solved. We have, because of our geographic positioning, we get crime that comes up the hill sometimes. We get crime that kind of comes from other areas as well, and we need an experienced police force there to deal with that. And each time that we send out these police officers to work extra hours, we're causing a whole lot of stress in an already stressful job that I'm not prepared to do. I want to find my way out of that, and that would be my point on that.
You done?
Yep.
Okay. First of all, we would drain our coffers, as you said. I don't know where that money's going to come from. And when we have emergencies, or you talked about high inflation, we're going to need money. We need backup money. And I'm not willing to spend all our savings. And then right now, because of our great investment financial director over there, we are getting 4% on our investments. And the interest rate is 4.5. So if we would have done this last year, the interest rate was 2.5. So we are still below the national average of what people are buying houses for now. And financial advisors have advised that it is better to bond out the bond out or go into debt, should I say, for the firehouses, because there's so many competing priorities. And one of the things that this board did say, our top asset is our firefighters and our police officers. And I feel we are at a super critical junction with our police. people do not know the stress that our township is under. We need to get our police up to standard of pay. And if we can take some of this money to do that, we're going to save the taxpayers in the long run when a police levy does come out, because if we save a $500,000 on the levy, that's 0.65, well, $650,000 times 30 years, that's $19.5 million we'll save the taxpayers, which is a little bit more than the interest we're going to pay. So I have talked to other townships, and most of them all bond out. This is nothing that we're going to be doing by ourselves.
All right, Mr. Baker, I think we've had a chance to hear.
Can I make another comment?
I'm going to call the question first. Is there a second on calling the question? Call for vote. Is there a second on that?
Okay. Motion second, yeah.
All right. So we'll go for the vote.
Ms. Ulrich?
Yes.
Mr. Unger?
No.
Mr. Waller?
Yes.
Now may I make my comment?
I'm sorry?
I asked if I could make a comment. I'd like to make one more
Well,
comment.
sure. I mean, we can keep this going all night. I think everybody's had a fair opportunity to give their point of view.
I wasn't done discussing it
Well,
yet. and-
okay, go ahead and make your points
My
again.
comment is what just happened here is, besides the 12 million to bond out, we're gonna have the additional 700,000 or so in fees, and we're going to end up paying 22, according to this chart that's been provided in the agenda, $22,756,000 to build these buildings, which, it's
Once
been-
again,
it's been decided.
you're being intellectually dishonest, because that chart reflects 12 million, not 7.2 million. And that's my issue continuously with this, is you've put a slant on things. Of 12 million, we don't have $12 million in federal funds.
We just approved a motion to
Okay.
bond out $12 million.
You've mischaracterized this again and again.
Did we just approve a motion to bond out
Right.
$12 million?
Where's the other 4.8 coming from?
That's not my point. What just happened is we just approved a motion to bond out $12 million, and I'm saying that there's more cost than that, and at the end of the day, we're gonna pay, according to this information, $22,756,000. And I guess my last comment is that I always thought you had to go to Washington DC to see people spend money they don't have, and apparently it's right here on Springdale Road, and congratulations.
And thank you. I always thought you had to go to Washington DC to see politicians go behind your back and lie
Apparently there's been an awful lot of discussion that I haven't been privy to, so.
Yeah, okay.
Also, with this bond issue, if we decide to prepay through some of our TIF funds, if we do, we can prepay and make this debt go away sooner, correct? And
Yep.
the interest would not be extrapolated over 30 years.
Right.
Would you be willing to motion that we would use those TIF funds to
I
pay
have
to
not been,
prepay?
I have not seen what TIF funds are going to become available.
As soon as, I think,
The numbers aren't there yet to even say that.
I think that's part of the holistic budget meeting that we have, next, is everybody next week? Or within the next 2 weeks?
That's the intent, yes.
Yeah.
I'll end it with congratulations and next item, I guess, so.
Thank you. I'll end that with a congratulations, that hopefully we can bring our police department up to par with salaries and at least make them competitive.
And get the fires
All right.
2 new stations.
Next item,
So the next item is a resolution adopting legislative priorities. Over the past several trustee meetings, we've had conversations, we've had town halls, we've had citizen feedback through goal setting about what the goals for the township should be in 2023 as it relates to the budget book. This is critical as it sends the clear direction to staff as to what initiatives we should be focusing on, the order we should be focusing on them, and how we should be prioritizing any dollars that we have available to make some of these things happen. In the resolution, there are 6 goals that are identified. The first goal is to continue to provide high-quality safety services. The second is to improve the look of the township with a focus on beautification, litter, and dumping. The third is to manage the township's finances responsibly while improving policies and processes. The fourth is to continuously improve the operations of the township. The fifth is to invest in our critical infrastructure, facilities, staff, and other assets. And the sixth is to increase focus on economic development and township prosperity. And with that introduction, I will recommend adoption of the resolution.
Any motions at this point?
I motion that we adopt the resolution adopting 2023 legislative priorities.
I second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Yes, when we talked about this a few weeks ago, I mentioned that there should be another item in there that says, knowing that this fire station thing was coming up, that we examine our fire delivery model, or fire service and EMS service delivery model, and, start to make decisions on what's going to happen to the two properties that are going to, the one up at Old Colerain and the, if we don't build on the, I don't know if we've actually determined that we're going to build on the Galbraith site or not, but, part of our discussion next year should be what to do with those vacated properties in a year or two, so.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that dovetails perfectly into both goal number 1 and number 6 as well, because odds are that they would be sold off for development of some sort.
Yeah, and I one thing we are not going to do is we're not going to leave, I agree completely, we're not going to leave these buildings behind. They're going to have we're going to do something with them. We're not going to leave it for the next board to figure out what to do with and as a maintenance issue. Yes, any other questions or comments?
None.
All right, vote please.
Ms. Orich?
Yes.
Mr. Unger?
Yes.
Mr. Waller?
Yes, that passes 3-0, adopting legislative priorities, which we will be dealing with individually with the department heads and the administrator over the next 2 weeks, various dates, but they are individual meetings with the exception of mine, which is with Mr. Baker. We'll be in with that, and that's completely allowed under Ohio Revised Code.
That is correct.
It's just that no 2 or 3 of us can be in the room at the same time.
Yep.
Which will not happen. All right.
And for the next 2 items, I'm actually going to ask Development Director David Miller to come back up and introduce those.
Mr. Miller, some nuisance and rental, please.
So, as you have heard, meeting after meeting, we have nuisance properties that come through here. We are struggling to find an efficient process for abating the properties that continually come up. I think there are a number that we can address and that they can be dealt with and eliminated very quickly, but there's just a batch that continue to evade a kind of a permanent solution. So Jared Alec, our zoning administrator, has done some research. Our law director has done as well, and we have found a model that we think will help us, give us some more tools in addressing the chronic nuisance properties that we have in Colerain Township. And so this is a resolution that will more clearly define what a nuisance property is, and then create a system by which we can address them over time, so that we have the tools to, I think, tighten the screws more quickly and exact enough concern and pressure on them to fix those problems. So I think from that 30,000-foot view, that's what this resolution is intended to do. And so this is the first reading today for your consideration, so that we can, again, give not only our police department and code enforcement, but our zoning department and our law director tools to be able to address the problems.
All right, and so this is a first reading, so we don't need a motion at this time. But is there any discussion? I guess we'll take it in an orderly fashion with nuisance, and then I guess rental.
Having this discussion with Jared, we need this to enforce why have zoning laws if you're not going to have the backing to enforce it?
Right.
So this is helping us enforce what we need to enforce.
Right. I think it's going to provide some clarification.
Yes.
Some boundaries where we can address through the Ohio Revised Code certain sections that allow us to address certain problems, certain ways. And again, I think it'll provide a more efficient process and give us tools so that they don't drag on forever. Mm-hmm. And I think that'll, again, improve our community the aesthetics, our streets. I genuinely felt for mistaken in living down the street near Capstan or on Capstan, knowing that this house has been there as a nuisance property for years. And we have struggled with it, and it's nearing its demise. But it's one of those things that we shouldn't have residents that have a concern about their own property and their neighborhood. Those are people we want, and to not have the tools to work with them and to process problem properties, I think is a struggle and a frustration, and this is going to help.
So I'm looking at the nuisance one, and I thought I saw it, but maybe I didn't. And this is an issue that's come up with kind of abatement properties. So in the case it's a renter, does the owner get a copy?
Yes, the owner of the property is going to be notified.
Okay, but by registered mail, is that?
Yes.
Because I think on a lot of these abatement cases, the owner probably would not be too happy to know that his property has to be continually abated because there's problems and issues with property code violations. But I understand with those notice of violations, we often just tag it and don't leave. But for this, which seems to be a next step up, it would be a notification process.
There will be the breadth that is needed in order to exact the proper penalties on them, and I think they have been created in this.
Other discussion?
Oh, I guess it'll be on our next agenda.
All right. Any on rental? I know that we kind of did nuisance. Rental is a similar template, but are there?
So in the rental registration, once again, it's a discussion that we've been having, not only in here, but next door. Had a discussion over the weekend, interesting enough, with an attorney with the city of Cincinnati. They've been studying the problem properties throughout the region, and there are certain institutional owners of rental properties that are in this region, and we happen to be home to one of the largest REIT ownerships, and as you can imagine, not all rental properties are bad. You can't just broadly brush all of them together, but what you miss out on with rentals is somebody that buys into their community, that has a concern about how their property looks, the upkeep. They become a part of that neighborhood and that street, and it's difficult to get there with a neighborhood when you don't have an ownership in your home. And so when we have 700 and 800 properties in Colerain owned by one particular real estate investment trust, it can become a problem, and we are seeing that. And so this rental registration will help us identify who the owner is, who the contact is when there is a problem, and again, give us more tools to be able to manage those problem properties. And I think that's what the goal of this is, to take us there, to give us the opportunity to help manage that. It's, as was mentioned earlier, there is a respect for private property ownership, whether it's an individual or a family or it's a corporation. But they don't have a right to destroy our communities and let them just fall into grave disrepair, as we have seen too many times. And this, again, will help us bring those community standards up when we have those problem properties.
David, how did you come up with $50 per rental unit when all the other municipalities are quite higher than that?
Well, the Ohio Revised Code does not allow us to charge fees that are greater than what it takes to administrate the program. So it can't be a revenue program that we are making money so that we can spend them on whatever else. Mm-hmm. So it's the cost that's associated with administering that program. So,
and that was the cost that was in those guidelines?
On the estimated number of homes that we think we have and what it would cost staff-wise, I think that's where that's come from.
And those same rules don't apply to a city or a village, right?
No,
those
they
rules,
would.
yeah, those rules do apply. I think volume is a key component, right?
Okay,
And
so the smaller municipalities can charge a lot more because they don't have the
yeah,
volume.
they don't have as many.
Because I just thought that was
And the other
extremely
thing to
low.
keep in mind here, I think as we've been modeling this, we've been modeling it around one staff person. If the board thinks that it could require 2 or 3 staff individuals to do that, then we could charge 2 to 3 times that rate. It's just when we look at the volume of rental properties, we have $50 equal to about the amount it would cost to hire one
So with
person.
other municipalities, see, they know who's non-owner occupied on these properties, so they send out these bills. So are we gonna do all the legwork, or just, how is one person gonna go and do, how many
I
thousands?
think they're going to be a contact person, and it would be through ProChamp, is that?
Yes, and so, you know, a lot of it's going to be done on the back end through data. So it's going to be using the auditor's database to determine who and who is not a rental based off of
So-
ownership, voter records, different things like that. I know we did that exercise a few years ago, found quite a number of properties
Exactly.
that were not registered with the county. I don't know if the county has since done anything with the list we gave them, but we've
don't
already
think
done
so.
that exercise a couple of times, so it's not terribly difficult to
So,
replicate.
like, with the investigation of all these units, you're saying one person can do this entire job. I don't know how many, just one person has 700, and there's how many entities out there. So we're looking at several thousands. I think it's overwhelming for a one-person job. That's just,
And that's fair. And so, and that's the hard part right now is
Right.
not having the program and not knowing exactly how much work, because we don't want to, only have, or we don't want to have 2 or 3 people and then it be the work
Right.
of one person and then you got 2 people just sitting around.
hence why I'm bringing up, so this could be our first year.
It's gonna be first year.
And
it-
then second year, depending on how.
if staffing needs are much greater, we could always
Okay.
increase.
We
the
can,
fee.
I've been addressing what Lori said about $50 is a nominal fee, and I think it is too, but let's see how it goes the first year.
And the last question, looking back at upon finding any 3 or more nuisance activities in a 12-month period, did we talk about if there was a way to change that 3 to a different number? Or is that what the Ohio Revised Code will allow, or
No, I mean, that's at your all's discretion. So the 3 was based off of what other communities have done. They wait until incident 4 basically to start charging folks. If it's 1 or 2, I don't know that that's going to hold up in court. But if it's a higher number, that's something that we can consider. So,
okay.
You're referring to the nuisance?
Yes.
You're going
Yeah,
back
I'm
to
looking
that.
at
Okay.
Section B, notices and orders.
Yes. So it's a rolling 12 months, and those 3,
And 1 or
Would
2
occur
wouldn't, 1 or
within
2
12
wouldn't,
and then once you trip the 4th, then that's when,
okay, but 1 or 2 wouldn't work,
no.
so it has to be
They're
3.
they're gonna,
Okay,
they're gonna be
that's fine.
noticed the same way that we do right now in our,
I get it.
enforcement
I'm with you.
so.
And this doesn't supersede any other, so I don't know why I noticed this, but sex criminal is on there.
I saw that too.
Yeah, so they still have to register, for instance, with the,
Oh,
yeah, sex crimes database or whatever.
And they usually are wrong.
All right, any other discussion? So these will be on the agenda next meeting. Old business,
Thanks, David.
thank you, sir. Hearing and seeing none. Consent items. Mr. Westbeck, what do you have for us?
yes, we have 4 items on consent tonight. The first is a contract with Zix for network diagramming at a rate of $72 per year. The next is a donation acceptance on behalf of the Fire and EMS Department from Kevin and Kathy Rupp in the amount of $990 that was donated in the form of Kroger gift cards. The next is a new hire in the police department, and that is a police officer, Mr. Michael Mondillo, at a rate of $35.10 per hour. And the final item is a donation acceptance in the administration department from COPFCU. This is $100 in support of the Veterans Day dinner event, and I would recommend adoption of the consent items. Oh, yeah, absolutely. I believe Chief Walls has a note from Kevin and Kathy Rupp.
Okay, great.
So I have an email here. I'd asked their permission to acknowledge it, more so than what was in the agenda. There was a photograph in the agenda, but what I have here is What brought this on is that my wife and I are recently retired and have been living in Colerain Township for 25 years. We're not rich, but we have effectively saved for retirement. When September 11th was coming close, we decided we did not want to be sad this year. Neither of us had any direct relationships with anyone who perished on 9/11/2001. But we have friends who did have friends, coworkers in the WTC who perished that day. We wanted to turn a negative into a positive, and we agreed that this was the best way for us to celebrate a very somber occasion. I only hope that our actions can inspire others, because we really appreciate what you do. You don't have to make the sacrifice to prove that you're willing to do so, thankfully. Best regards, Kevin and Kathy.
Thank you, Kevin and Kathy, for such kind words.
Yep. Thank you, Chief, and thank you to the reps.
And thank you to the reps.
All right, are there any motions at this time?
I motion that we approve the items in the consent agenda.
I second.
All right, so we have a motion and a duly second to approve items A, B, C, and D as provided in the consent agenda. That's contract with Zix Network Diagramming for $72 per year. So donation acceptance, Department of Fire and EMS from Kevin and Kathy Rupp, a $990 Kroger Kroger gift cards. Item C, a new hire, police officer, Police Department, Michael Mondello at $35.10 an hour, and a donation acceptance administration from COPFCU for $100 for the Veterans Day dinner. Discussion.
None.
All right, Mr. Baker.
Ms. Orich?
Yes.
Mr. Unger?
Yes.
Mr. Waller?
Yes, that passes 3-0. Mr. Baker.
Thank you, Board. Couple items. First, we reached our 250th public records request of the year this past week. We have fulfilled all but 9 up to this point. So again, we're just, I feel like we're doing a really good job of getting those out in a very timely manner. And then
You know that's Joe Burrow's number, right?
I do. I do. And I just wanted to talk really briefly about, some of the back and forth tonight, because I don't want everyone to lose sight here that, there's been a lot of discussion about cash and bonds and how we're going to finance the fire stations. But I just want to remind everyone that we established that we needed to build 2 new fire departments before we received a check for $7 million. So what it boils down to is people believe deeply in their side, but I just want everyone to remember that that's a pretty good problem that we have, is to decide how to spend $7 million that we didn't know we'd have last year. So I just want everyone to keep that in perspective, and when we have 2 brand new, beautiful fire departments, that hopefully everything will come into play then. So that's all I have.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there an executive session?
I do not have a need for an executive session.
All right. I will motion to adjourn at 9:27. Are there any seconds?
Second.
All right, any discussion?
Thank you to everybody who tuned in and stuck around. I think it's important that with that much money that we had a good discussion about it, so thank you.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for attending, tuning in as well.
Okay.
We go to a vote?
Ms. Ulrich?
Yes.
Mr. Unger?
Yes.
Mr. Waller?
Yes, we are now adjourned at 9:27 p.m., September 27th. Thank you.